November 25th, 1177, Montgisard. Baldwin IV charged Saladin's camp near Ascalon. The Muslims tried their absolute best to defend the camp, but the surprise attack by the Crusaders was too strong for the Muslims to resist. A Knight Templar even tried to kill Saladin. Luckily, Saladin's bodyguards could prevent a catastrophic attempt, but the battle ended with a crushing defeat for the Muslims. The whole army was destroyed at the Battle of Montgisard. Saladin managed to escape the battlefield to save his life with only a handful of soldiers.
This is the story of Saladin from Islamic history perspective.
Although Saladin became the Sultan of Egypt and Syria in 1175, he still did not control all the territories in Syria. The Zengi emirs tried again to drive Saladin out of Syria in 1176. This time the Ayyubids under Saladin's command and the Zengids under Saif ad-Din's command met at a place called Tel Sultan. This time Saladin really proved he was much better as a general than any Zengi emirs. Saladin led the charge by sending his troops in left and right wings forward. As soon as the Ayyubid wings met the Zengid wings, Saladin led a strong central attack on the Zengid camp. This sudden attack created panic among the Zengid soldiers and they started to run away. Saif ad-Din narrowly escaped with his life and fled to Aleppo. A great deal of riches from the Zengid camp came to Saladin's hand, but in an unprecedented display of humanitarian effort, he kept nothing for himself and gave away the batch of wealth to his soldiers. Saladin then moved his army towards Aleppo and laid siege to the castle of Arzaz on his way. His assassins again attempted to murder Saladin in the darkness of night, and once again they managed to injure Saladin but fortunately failed to kill him. Saladin then decided to neutralize the threat of the assassins once and for all. Soon the castle of Arzaz fell to the Ayyubids, and seeing no other way of defeating Saladin, Aleppo surrendered to Saladin. Then Saladin took his troops to Musyaf, where the leader of the assassins, Rashid ad-Din Sinan, had his castle. The battle was long and bloody, but Saladin kept pushing his troops against the assassins. Finally, the assassins surrendered and offered allegiance to Saladin. Now all of Syria was well and truly under Saladin's control. The following year, Saladin gathered a huge army and marched against the Crusaders. This was his first ever big campaign against the Crusaders. He had 18,000 soldiers and 8,000 elite Mamluks. Even all the Crusader states combined did not have such a large military force. Plus, the king of Jerusalem, Baldwin IV, was quite inexperienced in the battlefield because of his leprosy. The Ayyubid army reached up to the city of Ascalon with little resistance. All these factors combined probably made the Ayyubids a bit too confident about their victory. So the Ayyubid soldiers formed small groups and started to raid the surrounding area at will. The discipline was lost. Baldwin IV took this opportunity. He marched out of Jerusalem with 7,000 soldiers and quickly reached Ascalon, avoiding the scattered Ayyubid army. Then, on the afternoon of November 25th, 1177, Baldwin launched a sudden attack with all his might to Saladin's camp on the outskirts of Ascalon, a place called Montgisard. Although Saladin had 26,000 troops in total, only a few thousands of them were with him at that point. The rest of the army was scattered so far away that they were unable to come to help. Bottom line, the Ayyubids awfully lost the battle. Saladin fled to Cairo, and the scattered groups of Ayyubid soldiers were eventually killed by the Crusaders, one after another. This was the most devastating loss of the Muslims against the Crusaders since the First Crusade, the lowest point of Saladin's military career. The Crusaders grew confident after their victory in Montgisard and started attacking Ayyubid territories in Syria. Several emirs in Syria also rebelled against Saladin. Saladin moved back to Syria and started fighting against the Crusaders and the rebels at the same time. Soon Saladin had victories against both the Crusaders and the rebels, and it showed to the Muslims that Saladin might have lost just one battle, but he has not given up on his dream of recapturing Jerusalem. But Baldwin IV continued his offense against the Muslims. He started building a castle in a place called Jacob's Ford. From here, the Crusader army could reach to Damascus in only 2 to 3 days. Also, this was along the pilgrim route from Syria to Mecca. So, in 1179, Saladin offered the Crusaders 100,000 gold coins to move back from Jacob's Ford. He wanted to avoid bloodshed, but the Crusaders refused his offer. So Saladin had no other way but to force the Crusaders out of Syria. But the garrison in Jacob's Ford was too strong and the siege could go on for months. So Saladin made a brilliant plan. He split his forces into several groups and attacked Crusader territories far in the north of Jacob's Ford. So the Crusaders had to send some of their soldiers from Jacob's Ford to those areas. The Ayyubid soldiers could easily defeat these Crusader groups, so more Crusaders started to march north from Jacob's Ford. They never even imagined Saladin would attack the strong position of the Crusaders in the Jacob's Ford. But Saladin did the unexpected. With a brilliant but daring move, he attacked the Crusaders in Jacob's Ford. Saladin had only 5 days to capture the castle, as it would take 5 days for the Crusaders in the north to come back, and thus started one of the most grueling and challenging battles of Saladin's life, the Battle of Jacob's Ford. On the first day, the Muslims started bombarding the outer wall of the castle with siege weapons, but the wall stood still. On the second day, the bombardment continued, but there was no result. Saladin ordered his troops to dig a tunnel to go underneath the wall. The idea was to put explosive in the tunnel and blow up the wall. On the third and fourth day, the Muslims continued their struggle. They even tried to climb the wall with ladders but failed. At the end of the fourth day, the tunnel was completed. The explosives were placed and the fuse was lit. The Muslims waited on the surface for the wall to collapse, but the wall did not even move. That means the explosives were not placed right under the wall. The desperate Muslim soldiers ran into the tunnel, risking their lives to stop the fire and continue digging the tunnel. The fifth day of the battle began. The Muslims kept digging and attacking the wall at the same time. The day passed, but the wall did not fall. The Crusader reinforcement was only a few hours away. The Muslims were desperate. On one last attempt to destroy the wall, the Muslims put the explosives again inside the tunnel in the morning of the sixth day. The fire was set. The Muslims waited with a bone-chilling anxiety. If they failed this time, this would be another humiliating defeat for the Muslims. Then, there was an explosion, a huge one. When the dust and smoke settled, the Muslims saw that the part of the wall had finally collapsed. There was a gap. The Muslims rushed with all their strength to get inside the castle. But the Crusaders inside the castle did not yet give up. They gathered around the gap and started to fight the Muslims back. On the other hand, the Crusader reinforcement coming to the castle noticed the smoke from the explosion from far, and they thought that the castle had fallen and turned back. But the fight inside the castle was fierce. The Muslims had to fight for every inch of the castle. Archers from both sides rained arrows on each other. Hundreds and hundreds of soldiers died from both armies. But in the end, the Muslims' determination prevailed. The castle came under Muslim control, and Syria was free from the Crusaders yet again. Join us next time as we explore how the Crusaders tried to steal the body of Prophet ﷺ as a revenge for their defeat in Jacob's Ford, and how Saladin crushed the Crusader army in the Battle of Hattin. So, stay tuned.